Oxford from the inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth.
Hello and welcome to Oxford from the Inside, the good, the bad, but always the truth. I'm your host Ellis, and today we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a member of the LGBTQ plus society and just a student more generally at Oxford. So today I'm joined by Artemis, Yannis and Rodrigo. If you'd all like to introduce yourselves for me.
Hi. Hi, I'm Rodrigo. I use they them pronouns, and I'm a third year studying maths.
I'm Artemis. I use they them pronouns, and I'm a fourth year physicist.
And I'm Yannis, he, him. I'm fourth year doing history and French.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for joining me. The first thing that I'd like to know from you all is just broadly, what's your experience been like at Oxford as a member of the LGBTQ plus community?
Shall I start? So I think mine's been pretty good, though it's progressively gotten better almost. I have to admit, I never had a hard time. I'd already come out in school. So for me, my parents were always okay with me being gay. And then already being out in school, I came to Oxford being out, which is different to a lot of my friends who only gradually came out here. But I think even though I was out, I wasn't necessarily comfortable with being gay. I still wanted to be like a straight kid. I was like, okay, I might be into men, but I'm straight in any other way. I'll go to the straight clubs and I'll be just like all my straight friends. I just happen to like men. And then I got involved with the society and realized actually there's a lot more than just wanting to fit in with straight cis society. I think it's let me grow a lot and just be myself more and not be worried to be slightly more feminine, even though I'm still very, very much cautious about it. But go against norms in various ways and feeling comfortable going down the street with small stuff, even an earring or something, and not be scared to do that. So I think it's been great and it's been really encouraging to figure out who I am more. And there's just so many people here that are part of the community, which makes life a lot easier, I think.
I would strongly coincide with Yannis on a lot of that experience. I say I come from a slightly more conservative-ish background and school, and was not fully out to everyone. But here it's when I felt like I was actually allowed to experiment with bending gender norms, etc., and allowed myself to be more feminine. And it's actually been great. Everyone around has been really supportive. Haven't really had any problems, so I'm just grateful for that experience.
Yeah, so I think Yannis mentioned that not everyone gets to come out before coming here, and that was very much me. So I grew up in a slightly more conservative part of Australia, and Australia only legalized gay marriage, I think, December of 2017. So
wow.
In my first year here. And so that's where I came from. And basically, when I came to Oxford, I met 2 gay people before. I barely knew that trans people existed. And I distinctly remember in my first week here, the friend group I made during that first week basically all came out as gay at the same time around me. And then basically, I grew up in a place where I was never really able to explore my own sexuality and gender and just assumed I was cis and straight. And then I came here and was actually finally able to feel comfortable exploring that. And I'm not sure I'd actually have had that same experience at any other university, really.
That's really interesting. It's really reassuring to hear that Oxford has been a really positive place for you all. How did you expect Oxford to be, and how different has it actually ended up being from those expectations?
I did have some concerns because, as I said, for example, my school, I was the only person out in my entire year, and it was not very well received, if I'm honest. Um, and I was like concerned. I remember I knew a member of staff due to summer school I did here, and I remember talking to them about it, and they assured me it would be a very positive experience, and there's like societies, etc. I was slightly apprehensive about it, but the more I've got involved with things like SOC, I was LGBTQ representative of my JCR. I've seen that it's actually a very accepting place, and yeah.
I have to say, I did a gap year before coming here, and I just like worked for loads and then traveled and didn't really have time to worry about Oxford until like 2 days before arriving. So yeah, I didn't even think about if it could be a bad place, which is good because it wasn't. Like, it was a great place, and it's been a great place, and it still is. Obviously there will always be improvements, but I think like overall it's just been a really accepting place. And similar to like Artemis experience, we started out in my year with me and a friend being out, and our specific friendship group, like, we've ended up now with only one person not being part of the LGBTQ plus community in some way or other. So it just goes to show that, like, yeah, it's, you don't have to be out when you start, and you don't have to have it all figured. You really have the chance to like figure it out as you go along. But yeah, I have to admit, I didn't come with any expectations, neither good or bad, and I think yeah, I was glad that I didn't have those when I started.
Yeah, I think it was similar for me because as an international student, I had like no idea about Oxford, which was kind of lucky because I think within like the UK, there's a lot of stereotypes that like people can be like quite nasty and conservative. And like, yeah, I think like what I've really found is that it's like the culture you get at most universities where everyone's very open and accepting.
Yeah.
And you like, we should be realistic and admit like there are conservative people, and that's fine. Like, we don't all have to agree with on everything, but I think overall, like, it's a place where a lot of people are interested in learning a lot and new things, and they're, I think, therefore quite open to also questioning things such as sexuality more, just due to their nature of being interested in learning new things.
Yeah, you're dead right. And Rodrigo, you mentioned how you were the LGBTQ plus rep for your JCR. I was just wondering if you'd all found that the college environment had a lot of support for the community, or do you think there's anything that colleges and the university as a whole could do to better support the community?
I haven't seen that much specific support from my college. Most of it would be like JCR arranged, I'd say, like having LGBTQ reps who are peer support trained. On the whole, I think there's a lot more that can be done kind of institutionally. So, for example, to this day, even though I have communicated pronouns to tutors, to like higher up in my college, I still receive like college mail as Mr. Rodrigo Morlasco Parisia. Uh, so I think there's a lot more that can be done because it's always under the assumption like cis until proved otherwise. And for example, it had to with every new tutor, I have to have a moment where I'm like, actually, my pronouns are not he, him, etc. So I think there's some more stuff that can be done, but I have never had any negative feedback from this. As in, most tutors will respect it and will follow it, and yeah.
Yeah, I think a very similar experience for me where as long as you mention it, like all the tutors and staff are really accepting. And then like most students are really, really accepting as well. Yeah, as Yannis said, obviously there's a couple who might come from a background where they haven't been exposed to this kind of thing as much. But generally most people are very willing to learn. And I think it's difficult at some colleges because I think some colleges are famous for being like more left-wing, and then obviously a lot of LGBT people end up applying there, and you get much larger communities at some colleges. But I think overall, like most colleges have at least some level of support in place for everyone, even if there's not quite as large of a community there.
Yeah, but there are still like hurdles, as Rodrigo said, that just shouldn't exist. an example from my college is for LGBTQ History Month, but also for like Pride Month, Keble wouldn't have the Keble would put the Pride flag up for one day and then put it down, and it was always justified by saying, oh yeah, like the mast is kind of broken, so we can't put it up for the full thing. And it was students who had to go and say, actually, we don't like this. And once the students said that, our like LGBTQ plus reps went into a meeting and said, we don't like this, we would like to change this. Then our tutors, one of the tutors who happens to be gay himself, he then like apparently held a speech being like, it's so sad that like I walk around Oxford with all the colleges having the flags up, and then I come to Keble and we don't. But I would just say like that shouldn't be on us anymore. Like it shouldn't be students in 2019 telling the college, actually, can we just simply have the flag up for a full month, only to kickstart it all? Like surely that's something that by now they should understand that it's just the right thing to do. So yeah, I think there's in many ways it's a great place, but there are still like pushbacks sometimes where I don't quite understand why, and why it isn't easier to just get it like sorted quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like even though a lot of colleges are kind of slow on the uptake, I think over the last few years there's been like a huge amount of progress made.
Yeah.
And then like we've really gotten the flying of flags at like, most colleges now. Things like gender expression funds, so for trans students to buy gender affirming clothes and things like that, have basically been implemented in almost all of the colleges over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right about the flags. Like I think even when we started 4 years ago, there were a lot less flags going around, and now you walk through Oxford, especially this month obviously, and you can see the flags everywhere, and that's just quite encouraging. And yeah, I was talking to one of the Plush managers. Plush is the gay club here, and they were saying, yeah, it's changed so much in the last 5 years. So it is really encouraging. And I would absolutely say like there are some like small bits that are annoying, but overall it is really great.
That's really good to hear. It's definitely good to see the progress that's being made in the university, especially given how much of a bad reputation Oxford can have in a lot of ways, and for a lot of entirely valid reasons. It's definitely nice to see that there are changes being made, and especially over our time at the university as well, because normally with Oxford it takes half a century for them to actually implement any changes. So it's really nice. So you were all involved in the LGBTQ plus society. I was wondering if you could tell us more about your roles within that, and what the society does more generally.
Sure. I was the previous welfare rep. New one has been elected now, but kind of my role was just supporting students, so that if they ever needed someone to talk to, I'm peer support trained, so they could come to me. And also on the other hand, there's usually two welfare reps. It's me and Lewis, and we also put together mostly non-alcoholic events. So we've done games nights, just like general social events. And also this term, mostly Lewis put together some resources in sexual health. That's for example, most of the work we've done.
You wanna go?
Okay, sure. So I'm the outgoing trans rep for the society, and basically it's kind of a similar role to the welfare rep, I think, where I'm just mostly there to support like the trans community in Oxford. I think it's slightly different to some of the other roles in that there's also a lot of practical advice I end up giving, as in like how to change people's like emails to match their preferred name and things like that. But yeah, mainly I'm just there for welfare and running like a weekly or every second week, just a little social session with non-alcoholic and just snacks for the trans community.
Yeah, and I was the social sec, so I was kind of in charge of the bigger events. Yeah, it was a weird year this year. So I've only really been on committee. All of us have only been on committee during the pandemic. essentially. So all of our events are basically online. But I think SOC's like overall role is to be a place where people can be out and themselves and not have to worry about that. And while there is also LGBTQ campaign, which is run by the SU, who kind of focus on like pushing the university and like doing political things, we're more like there to just have fun and be there for your welfare and actually like provide a nice and fun place where people can be themselves without having to worry about anything. And yeah, and the big socials, I mean, our biggest one would be Tuesday drinks normally, but hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah, well, I was
Yeah, I
going
think.
to. Oh no, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think we're most famous for Tuesday drinks, but we do run all of like our smaller and usually like identity-based socials. So obviously I run the trans welfare things. There'll be like things like events for the BIPAN community or events for like the asexual aromantic community. And I think a lot of people have a weird impression about that, where they think they just come and exclusively talk about being LGBT in these spaces, but it's more like a space where you can just be yourself, even if you don't actually end up talking about your like experience as an LGBT person, and you just end up just hanging out and just talking about TV shows or anything like that.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a bit of a misrepresentation of what LGBTQ plus society is like. But what I wanted to ask is, obviously, given there has been a pandemic for the past year, is there any events in particular that you've been able to put on that have like stood out to you, that have been particularly nice to kind of break up the monotony of lockdown?
Well, there were a few that, I don't know, stood out, I guess. One that stood out to me personally was, what was this? We did like Christmas cracker decorations where I bought loads of supplies and we actually like mailed them to people to make their own Christmas crackers. And the reason why it stands out is because I was up till 4 a.m. making those packets. But it was, I don't know, it was worth it because it meant people could actually have something physical from SOC, and it wasn't just because by that point, like everyone had got so used to and bored of just a Zoom call. So it was nice to actually give them something that they physically had and could like then afterwards crack, I guess. But so it was events where we really tried to kind of reach out to them, not just over the internet, but also physically. So we had an open mic and we sent people drinks in the post. And that was again something that I kind of liked more than just the ones where it was like, well, we're gonna do a call in 2 hours, please join and talk about stuff. But yeah, I think it was those. And then in Freshers Week, we could actually do some in-person things because that was in between lockdowns. So that was also nice to actually physically see people for a bit.
I'd say from my end, it's just been tricky to put on events because, as Yannis said, people are just bored of Zoom calls. So we've definitely still been trying to make social events and like some welfare events as well, drop-ins. But it is just hard to get people to come to these events because it is not as rewarding to actually show up, and people are a bit tired of being in tutorials all day. And
Yeah, I think like we've had to be really creative in how we use the online format. And like as Yannis was saying, all the decoration events I found really fun. I think I have a card somewhere that I made for one of these. If you give me a moment.
Yay.
Oh, this is brilliant. We actually get to.
Yeah, we had a
something.
little postcard making event, and then I made all these butterflies.
Oh, that's so nice.
And then I actually don't think I'm capable of coloring in without doing it in rainbows anymore.
Sorry, we had to accept the fact that like for Tuesday drinks, we'd probably have 200 people and the best we'd have for an online event is 16. It just, it wasn't going to be the same. And all we can hope for is that one day it'll go back to what it was pre-pandemic. But yeah, I think something inspiring that we're doing right now, and I don't want to make it too much of a plug, but we've got like speakers coming in that are like from the community and basically just talking about their lives. And I've been hosting them, so I've been actually interacting with them a lot, and it's been quite moving and touching and inspiring 20, 30 years later. So even those events are a lot less interactive because it's just someone talking about their experience. It still is, I think, quite like long lasting and good to hear. And I don't think I would have taken the time out if I hadn't like been forced to do it. And I'm glad I was, because yeah, they've been good. And they remind us of all the privileges we have now that people didn't have in the past.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's good that you've still been able to put on good events, basically. So we have time for one last question, and I think this is one of the most important questions that I'll probably give on the podcast. But what advice would you give to LGBTQ plus students who are thinking of applying to Oxford?
A big one I'd say is try to get involved with the community, because especially in small cultures, it can be hard to find people who you feel share those kind of experiences with you. And it can be daunting at first, especially if you don't know many people there. But honestly, I entered SOC when I was a second year, actually. I entered a bit late, not knowing anyone there whatsoever. And now I have like many wonderful friends from there. And yeah, and there's many other LGBTQ spaces. For example, the SU has LGBTQ campaign. If you're interested in activism, you can be a LGBTQ rep at your college. There's many things you can do. But I would strongly encourage to get involved with the community in general.
Mm-hmm. I don't really know. I find it very hard to give advice because like everyone's experience is so different. Like I think just try to come and be comfortable with what you are and don't feel pressured to doing anything you don't want to do. But yeah, just see what you're interested in the community, and know that most of us are very open and very like excited to see new people that might want to join. We're definitely a welcoming bunch overall, and you shouldn't be afraid if someone seems like really intimidating because they're so out and so like clearly queer. That doesn't mean that we aren't happy to like talk to people that are less so. I mean, I personally am definitely not like in your face queer. And I think that like there will always be like a community out there for you, and there are so many facets to being queer.
Yeah, I think I'd say just go for it and apply, because I think, as we all mentioned, a lot of people find Oxford probably the most accepting place they've ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, don't listen to all the stereotypes you hear about Oxford, because it is genuinely a really lovely place with lots of really lovely people.
Thank you. That's genuinely really fantastic advice, and different advice from all three of you as well, which is great to hear. Thank you all for joining me today. It's been really lovely to record with you all. Thank you to everyone who's listening at home. Make sure to check us out on social media at Oxford from the Inside, and take care, everyone. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.